Hello and welcome back, finally, to the Week in Nintendo right here on GVG. I'm your host, Steve Bowling, and it turns out that doing a Switch 2 podcast is extraordinarily difficult when you're covering every single thing that happens with the console in their own videos every day. When we sat down to try to do the first Week in Nintendo after the Switch 2 launched, we realized we had talked about every single thing that had happened in our own videos, and we kind of kept that energy for a long time, going through every single small piece of news and posting videos. It was a great opportunity for us. It helped the channel grow quite a bit, and we're enormously thankful to all of you who have watched all our coverage, and we're going to keep covering Switch 2 stuff. It's just not going to be as breathlessly as it has been for the last 4 months. So it made sense for the show to come back now, especially as smaller games are starting to come out and they're ones that wouldn't necessarily carry their own videos. We're going to be making a few changes here on the Week in Nintendo. We're going to be doing small reviews of smaller games that you might not click on otherwise, but you might want to hear brief impressions, brief reviews with a score on, as well as talking about bigger events, like the time I got flown to Paris to play Pokémon, or, whatever next big game is around the corner. I'm certainly playing Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 right now, which I'm preparing for a video all its own, but I have some thoughts that I'll share later in the show on that. But it turns out that, just kind of having a podcast that is essentially regurgitating all the videos you made that week just didn't seem appealing. And we didn't want to blow up your guys' subscription feed with hour-long videos about videos we already made. So now that the Switch 2 hype has calmed down a bit, and now that we're in a place where everybody who wanted to get the console can get one, and we're all just picking up and playing the games we like, I figured this was a good time to bring the show back and have a bit more calm discussion about what's going on with the Switch 2, what's going on with Nintendo in general. Obviously, there's a bunch that's going to happen in the next few months. We've got Pokemon Legends ZA in just a couple weeks, or 10 days, a week and a half from the publication of this video. But we've also got Metroid Prime in December, which I can't wait to play and talk about. I played it briefly at the Switch 2 premiere event in April. I think John played it at Gamescom as well. But realistically, there's so much more to learn about this game. Trailers have been kind of here and there showing new elements. Samus is on a motorcycle. That seems interesting, but who knows what's going to happen with that. For now, I think that, we've got a lot on the horizon for Nintendo. We've got the Mario Galaxy movie coming out next year. We've got the 40th anniversary celebrations for Mario, which obviously kicked off with the Galaxy 1 and 2 re-release on Switch. So tons going on, but we're finally at a place where we're probably not going to make a video on every single tiny thing, and this might be a place for you to catch up on some of the smaller things that you may not have heard of. That said, this episode, I want to focus on things we've talked about a bit, but also some new stuff, right? I recently put up a video on Disgaea 7 Complete for the Switch 2, which highlighted just how kind of upset folks are about the keycard situation. And in the intervening months between episodes, we've learned a bit more about why developers are choosing to use keycards. For instance, one of the members of the Star Wars Outlaws team, which also just got an updated performance patch on Switch 2, which I'll have to check out at some point, they posted that the reason they chose to use a game key card was that Star Wars Outlaws was built for the faster loading times of the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, and that the card slot on the Switch 2 was too slow to read the game, that even if they were able to produce a physical copy of the game complete on a card, the Switch 2's loading speeds from the card slot would be too low for the game to function in line with expectations based on how the game was designed and built. It would have required much more effort to change how data is streamed within the game. And that is something that I hadn't considered. That's something that I wasn't aware of. Adding fuel to that was a prominent member of the Final Fantasy VII Remake team, I can't remember who it was, talking about their work on the Switch port and kind of beseeching players to accept key cards because they felt that, this was another case in which they they couldn't get the game to work properly unless it was loading from the Switch's internal memory or from a micro SD express card. Now, the obvious response to these is that Nintendo should build in some allowance for games to be installed, right? So that you can insert a game card and then it installs the data on that card to your Switch's internal memory, updates it within the internal memory, and just requires you to insert the card to play. And I agree with you. I agree with everyone who is saying that. I think that is an optimal solution that would solve a lot of problems. But it is interesting to hear that it's not developers just kind of taking the easy, cost-effective route. Because I think that's what a lot of us assumed before we got this information, was that it was just them looking at the price of a 64 gig card and then looking at the game key card and saying, yeah, that's not it. We don't want to pay for the 64 gig card. Where in reality, there are other design considerations to take into mind when doing this. So where do we go from here? Well, I think that Nintendo has to be working on a solution for this. I think that Nintendo probably didn't expect the backlash to game key cards to be as big as it is, because they only really showed these to development partners who were like, you know what, this is a great way to work around a limitation built into the Switch 2. So let's, go for it. Let's do this. It's better than having to redesign our games to load using much slower speeds, because realistically, when you're designing a game, you have to design for the lowest common denominator, unless you can guarantee your game is going to run off internal storage, right? And currently the only way to guarantee that is sell it exclusively on the eShop or sell it as a game key card. For some reason, Nintendo opted to make the Switch card slot just slower. And to be fair, we've seen that in our various loading comparisons that we've put up on the channel. The game card always comes out last. We didn't know, obviously, that was because the card slot was speed limited when compared to the internal flash memory or micro SD express, but it makes a lot of sense. So essentially, we're in a situation in which developers are having to work around a limitation of the system, but one method allows them to utilize the full I/O speed that the Switch 2 is capable of, and another would require them to limit their games or redesign them in such a way that they make use of slower loading speeds, maybe adding loading zones. And I don't know about you, but I don't want that. I'm happy that developers are opting for using the speeds of the internal storage, especially when we're talking about games that were originally designed for the PS5 or the Xbox Series X, or even modern PCs that can use this ultra fast, NVMe based loading technology. So I think that Nintendo has to know that they've kind of stepped in it a bit, and I imagine they're working on a solution. I don't think it's going to be in the near future. I think we're at best a year off, but Nintendo will do something here in order to kind of make the public a little less upset about the state of physical releases on the Switch 2, because the vast majority of them are still game key cards. And while it at least makes a bit more sense, I understand why developers are choosing it now. I wish Nintendo wouldn't have put them in a position where they have to make this choice. It would have been better if we could just have a card slot that was as fast as everything else. I'm not sure why we didn't do that. I think it was probably to save on the cost of physical media, as well as the hardware price for the console, right? Faster components cost more money, faster cards cost more money. And in this economy, we all know that would have been passed down to us in some way, shape, or form. And real quick, just speaking of the economy, when we made the last episode of The Week in Nintendo, $450, $500 seemed like an awful lot to be paying for the Switch 2. Since then, both the PlayStation 5, the entire line of those, and the Xbox Series have gone up in price to where we have our first $800 console, and it is somehow not the most powerful one. It is the Xbox Series X, which is somehow now more expensive than the PS5 Pro, which is not a sentence I thought I'd ever be saying. The Xbox Series X, to be clear, if you don't exist outside the Nintendo sphere, the Xbox Series X is inferior in every way to the PS5 Pro. So it's kind of crazy to me that Microsoft has doubled their prices again. Xbox Live just went up this week to $30 a month. or $360 a year. There's a real debate to be had about whether, dollar to dollar, NSO is the better deal. It's certainly value-wise like an incredible deal at this point. We've got Virtual Boy coming in January. What? We haven't even talked about that on the channel, but Virtual Boy is coming to NSO. And I wonder how you do that, because Nintendo is going to be charging $100 for a Virtual Boy head-mounted display that you put your Switch into, basically like a dock, or you can buy like a cardboard one, but it enables you to play Virtual Boy games on the Switch too. And I have to wonder if you really can afford to take the drip feed approach with Virtual Boy games, considering there's only, I think, 14. I feel like Virtual Boy is something where you just give everybody all the games immediately, because otherwise, I think if you spend $100 on a dock specifically to play Virtual Boy games, and then you only get one a month for like a year, that people are going to be justifiably upset about that. I think with a library this small, you basically have to give everything. Now, I wish I could remember what game it was, but there were a couple things that could be really cool for Virtual Boy for NSO. Someone made a Virtual Boy link cable because it was never actually sold, and found that there was actual link cable functionality still existing within a specific Virtual Boy game, got it working, played the first ever multiplayer game on Virtual Boy. So we could make that available, right? That would be something that you could emulate online over the internet for people to have that unique experience over NSO. But if I remember correctly, there was a handful of finished, never released Virtual Boy games, which again would be a really cool thing to add to a service like this. Nintendo giving people access to games that they haven't finished or haven't released, like Star Fox 2 with the Super NES Classic and then NSO. Those are the things that I really signed up for the service for, like rare games, difficult to find games. So for me, Virtual Boy is a big deal. I'm really happy about Virtual Boy. I've only ever in my life seen a single Virtual Boy in the wild, and I got to play it very briefly while my mom got a haircut in the 90s. So I haven't had the opportunity to really go hands-on with the Virtual Boy. I've always wanted to own one, but they are now kind of mythically expensive, right? Finding one on eBay is so incredibly difficult that it's just not worth it. And knowing it's coming to NSO means that it's just going to be, that much more accessible. Would I have preferred something else? Absolutely. I'm dying for DS and 3DS to come to NSO. I suspect we will get a very expensive attachment for the top of the Switch 2 to make that work, but I'm telling you right now, I think a lot of people would be here for it. If you gave us a little stylus and a Switch 2 second screen, I think people would pay for that. I know I would. And if you don't want it, maybe just give people the option to play, both screens vertically oriented the way you would in an emulator, and just make it an optional thing, right? Like you don't have to lock DS or 3DS NSO behind an additional hardware purchase. Because I do think in this economy, people are going to probably more often than not go for the cheaper option and just play them with the hardware they have. I mean, because if you throw a 3DS game up on your TV, you're going to have more than enough space. You're not going to be worried, and you could always use mouse mode for the bottom screen. It'd be fine. So we'll have to see. But I will say, if any of these come true, I apparently have a pretty good track record with wild predictions like this. Back before the Week in Nintendo was here on YouTube and everywhere else, it was solely a Patreon podcast. And one of our listeners sent me in this clip, and I want you to remember when you listen to this, this was from September 2024, a full 6 months before we got details about the Switch 2. Let's play the clip. Nintendo probably is going to face some resistance if they re-release Breath of the Wild 7 years after its release for $70. I do think, however, you might get people like me who own multiple copies of Breath of the Wild to buy the patch for $10. Or possibly you could even add this as an additional benefit or even an additional tier to Nintendo Switch Online. Like, hey, you want current gen upgrades for your first party Nintendo Switch games? if you're a member of NSO, expansion pack plus or whatever you want to call it, we will give you free current gen upgrades to all of our titles. That could be worth it on its own if you're a diehard like those of you listening, or like myself, who have probably purchased most, if not all, of Nintendo's first-party offerings on the Switch. Now that is wild. Obviously, I didn't get everything right, but I did get Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom coming to the Switch too. I got the $10 upgrade packs. I got them being offered for free on NSO. I don't know how I did that. I don't know what I was on that day, but I need more of it. So hopefully some of these predictions I just made will pan out and they'll match up with what the reality is. At least the Virtual Boy one. Just give us all the games like right when it comes out. There's no reason to gatekeep games, and maybe give us a couple unfinished ones. That'd be cool. Like I know Nintendo sat on a few finished games that they just never released because the Virtual Boy was a flop. So it'd be really nice to see those. But I hope the next systems after Virtual Boy are DS and 3DS. Those obviously have massive libraries, tons of hype. But really, the one that I want the most, the system I want the most from Nintendo Switch Online is the Wii. Like, I want the era of the Wii Remote back, the Nunchuck back. I want to play Wii games on my Switch too. And I want them to sell me an NSO Wii controller and sensor bar. Like, just set it up, Nintendo. I am dying for this. Like, obviously, you could just add support for the existing Wii Remote. It was Bluetooth. Like, you could add that to the Switch too, and you could dig out your old Wii Remotes and use them if you still have them. I do. I have a ton of Wii Remotes floating around my house. But I think that console, for me, has one of the best libraries of all time. The intuitive nature of the control inputs for the Wii was just something that never quite got matched again. And going back and playing Galaxy 1 and 2 in 4K on the Switch 2, I still feel just how much I miss having the Wii Remote for these games. When I'm playing them with my Joy-Con, and I only play Galaxy 1 and 2 on the Switch 2 with split Joy-Con because anything else feels wrong, I still miss the accuracy of the Wii pointer. Like, I miss the ergonomics of the Wii pointer. I miss the little cord between the Wii pointer and the nunchuck. I don't know. It just felt wonderful. It was one of Nintendo's best controllers in the weirdest way. And I'm a little sad that some of the things that they did with the Wii Remote never made their way back. Like, the speaker and the controller, I think, was brilliant. Like, I'd love to see an updated version of the Wii Remote for Wii ports to the Switch 2. Like, give me a speaker, give me a mic in the controller. Let me use it for game chat with my friends while we play, Wii Sports online. Like, there's so many cool things you could do with an updated Wii Remote. But I think that that would be the system that I'd want to see the most from the Switch 2 once we kind of get rolling. I still think we're not quite at the phase where it's as good selection-wise as the Virtual Console was. I mean, we're still missing some Sega consoles. Like, we don't have Master System, we don't have arcade games. And you could make the argument that, of course, Arcade Archives is filling that slot, but it was nice to have it under one cohesive banner. And I know that that was just basically Virtual Console was an eShop, right? But I could go in there and say, I want to look at what Sega Master System games you have and get a whole list of all these cool games. I want to see what TurboGrafx 16 games you have and get a list of all those. And while NSO is very, very, very slowly adding new consoles, I don't know that we'll ever see nearly as many third parties. Like, getting Genesis was one of the hypest moments that I can remember for the NSO service. Like, just the fact that a non-Nintendo console was on the service was very exciting to me. And I made a point to get the Genesis controller in the original looking box because it was just weird to have a Nintendo branded Sega Genesis controller. I think that is one of the coolest things that Nintendo and Sega have ever done. But that's enough about NSO. Let's talk about what's been going on like this week, what I've been doing for the last several weeks, long while with my Switch 2. Obviously, you guys have seen the video. I went to Paris. I played Pokemon Legends ZA in the Eiffel Tower, no less, which, by the way, just on a personal note, is absolutely insane. That is just a bucket list thing. I know I'll never do that again. But I got to play Pokemon Legends ZA in the Eiffel Tower, which was loads of fun. Thanks to Nintendo for sending me out for that. I also did a walking tour of Paris with a group of journalists. I was joined by Brian Shea from Game Informer, Casey from IGN, Rika from CNN, and we did a walking tour of the city while playing Pokemon Go. That basically the route had been set up for us. We were collecting stickers so that we could get a Mega Evolved Charizard. It was the most I've ever played Pokemon Go in my life, and I actually really enjoyed it. But while I was on that trip, I was also getting codes for several different games. So let's talk about what I've been playing for the last few weeks. Starting off with Disgaea 7 Complete. And we've got a comparison video between the Switch 1 and Switch 2 versions. And there's a lot to unpack there because I do think there were some missteps here. But there's also a great game underneath these missteps. So when I talk about missteps, I mean the fact that, of course, Disgaea 7 does not have an upgrade path on the Switch 2. So you can't go from the Switch 1 version of Disgaea 7 to the Switch 2 version of Disgaea 7 Complete without, just buying the game entirely new. And I don't think that that's the best decision because Disgaea 7 is already kind of a niche title, and your audience is very likely to buy the upgrade pack because the Switch 1 version, frankly, is just kind of inconsistent. It sits at like 35 to 40 FPS most of the time, but it fluctuates wildly between those. So like you'll be seeing the frame rate counter just go up and down constantly. But the Switch 2 version is just a locked 60 FPS. No hiccups, no stutters, nothing. It just runs at 60 the entire time. And I really, truly wish we could have gotten an upgrade path, like go to the eShop, pay whatever. I think the reason why here is because they bundled all of the DLC in with Complete to basically give you a package where when you buy the game, you get every single piece of downloadable content. For me, this was huge because it gives you some items that help with progression in the beginning of the game. But it also gives you access to all of the downloadable content quests, which for me is a highlight. It includes all of the additional characters from previous entries. I was able to get Killia from 5, Laharl from 1, and add them to my party, and basically just kind of play through the game with a mishmash of all my favorite characters across the history of Disgaea. That to me is worth the price of entry alone because I've played every Disgaea game. So I kind of have my favorites. I like Valvatorez from 4. And having all of these folks in one spot, I thought was really, really cool. Disgaea 7's story is also super interesting. It takes place in Hinamoto, which is a Japan-themed netherworld. Netherworlds are basically short term for hell. Everyone in the game is a demon. So it's basically a story about demons living in kind of a feudal Japan style version of hell. And a visitor one day comes. She's your typical otaku. She's a total weeb. She wants to learn about the culture, but has these preconceived notions about what it's going to be like, which are summarily shattered as soon as she arrives. She ends up getting thrust into conflict, picks up a swordsman named Fuji, and the two of them go on a quest to restore Bushido to the Hinomoto netherworlds. It's fun, it's stupid, it's silly. The story is basically like a good anime. Like every couple of missions, you end an episode and you get a next episode preview that's usually over the top and funny. It's a great game. I really recommend that if you've never tried Disgaea, you should try out 7 Complete. It is my second favorite behind 5. I would give it an 8. It is a wonderful game, lots of fun, and I think that if you're into strategy RPGs and you want something a little less serious, it's absolutely worth checking out. Aside from that, games that I'm not quite ready to assign a score to, but that I have been playing, I picked up Hades 2, which is one of the few games on the Switch that runs at 120 FPS. It looks like it runs, based on what I was told by Supergiant, the internal resolution is 1080p. It's outputting at 1440p, 120 FPS. It plays at 1080p 60 in docked mode, it plays at 1080p 60 in handheld mode. And I have to say that this is one of the few games that I'm just not playing in handheld mode at all because that 120 FPS is brilliant to behold. It makes the game feel much more fluid, much faster. I haven't gotten very far. I am definitely getting beat up but I've made it to the second boss, which is a siren with a band, and it's one of my favorite boss encounters that I've played in a game in quite a long time. Silksong also has like a music-themed boss, but I would say that Hades 2 does it better. Basically, you're fighting a guitarist, a drummer, and a singer, and when you take one of them out, their track temporarily dips out while they take a break to rest up. Each of them has their own solo sections where they become the featured artist and start launching more and more attacks, but their track gets louder as you do that. It's just wonderful. I'm really enjoying Hades 2 so far. I'm going to try to beat it, but I famously did not beat Hades 1, so we'll see how far I get. The challenge level is pretty high, but it's not insurmountable. But if you haven't checked it out, Hades 2 is fantastic on Switch 2, and if you've already picked it up on another platform, cross-save is a thing, and it automatically uploads. I have Hades 2 on both Steam and Switch 2, and I've been able to play on my desktop in 21:9 on my nice OLED display, and then go back to playing it on my Switch 2, and the synchronization between saves is pretty seamless. So definitely a great game if you want to use the Switch 2 as a portable means of playing a game that you'd rather have on like a beefier device like a PlayStation or a PC even. So full review coming later, but right now, extremely positive first impressions, absolutely loving it. And then, of course, I've been playing Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, and I got these just a day before recording, so 1 and 2, they're fantastic. These are all-time great platformers. I don't need to tell you that. If you're watching a show like this and you're this far in already, then you probably have played Mario Galaxy and you probably love Mario Galaxy, because realistically it is almost a Criterion Collection type of game, like a game that if you profess to be a fan of the medium, you need to play. Galaxy is, for my money, the best 3D Mario adventure ever. And I like 1 more than 2, and I know that that's a hot take these days, but I feel like it has an almost you had to be there quality to it, in that if you got to play them in the order in which they released, going from Sunshine to Galaxy, Galaxy was mind-blowing. Galaxy was, the tricks they play with gravity, the appearance and design of the world, the introduction of the Lumas and Rosalina, and just frankly, the planetoid-based gameplay in which Mario is able to, for the first time ever, run completely around structures with simulated gravity. It just was so much to get my head around. Like, it felt as inventive to me as Mario 64 was when it came out. And Galaxy 2 is just more. Is it an improved version of Super Mario Galaxy? Yes, but is it as original? Obviously not. How could it be? And I think for me, that originality of Galaxy 1, the fact that it came first really puts it over the top for me. Galaxy 2 is obviously an improvement over Galaxy in pretty much every way, but for me, I just have this soft spot for Galaxy that I'll never get over. But both of them are fantastic games. I think they're wonderful on the Switch too. And I do think that, I can't tell you whether to spend $70 on Galaxy 1 and 2 or not. And it does become a bit more complicated if you own 3D All-Stars and you have Galaxy on there. But Galaxy 1 in particular, because that's going to be the one people are upset about, right? Galaxy 2, obviously, first time out, outside of the Wii, people are going to want to pick that one up. But Galaxy 1 is still doing a whole lot. Like, it's got better textures. The visuals are so much crisper. And I think if this was anything else, people would be celebrating it, right? If the context were different, people would celebrate Galaxy 1 on the Switch 2. Like, the original creators went back, remastered this game, gave it a much nicer look, much better textures, brought it to modern hardware. But Nintendo is taking some lumps on this one, and it's because they released it just a little while back, right? So there could have been a way around this. They could have offered like an upgrade pack for Galaxy specifically, because if you downloaded those games from the eShop, they were available, in various ways. Obviously, it's been delisted for a while, so if you didn't get 3D All-Stars, then this is another chance. But I have to say, I'm really happy with what Nintendo's done here, and to me personally, it's worth it. I'm happy that I picked them up. I really enjoy these games. They are two of the best games ever made. The same way Square Enix can release Chrono Trigger as many times as they want, or Nintendo can re-release Ocarina of Time as many times as they want. I will just buy these games, and maybe that's me. I'm the problem, but I think that these are both wonderful, worthy games to be playing. But that's everything I've been playing this week. We'll have a full video on Galaxy 1 and 2 in the coming days. But next week, or in the weeks to come, we still have a lot going on in the world of Nintendo. We have Pokemon Legends ZA coming out on the 16th, and that is going to be another huge game. We're just under 2 weeks away from the release of that. By the time this video goes live, I think it'll be a week and a half or even 11 days, but that's a no small amount of time. Like we're close to one of the biggest games of 2026. I've played more of Legends ZA than anyone else on the team, and I am absolutely enamored with it. I didn't think I would be. I didn't think that I would enjoy Legends ZA as much as I have. I had heard John's initial impressions that it was a bit too slow, a bit kind of clunky from his Gamescom demo time, but I played it at PAX West, and that was the exact same demo that John played at Gamescom, and I really enjoyed it. I think that the battle system being fully real time with cooldowns made it a bit more hectic and exciting for me because there's so much to manage, so many moving parts to the battle system now. But I will concede that in that demo, you're given a glimpse of the potential, but not really the full-on execution. What I played in Paris was a lot more complicated, full parties of Pokemon, lots of mega evolutions, alpha Pokemon, being able to catch my own and use them in my party. I got more of a taste of the full experience of Legends ZA, and I really, really liked it. I've been having, I'm just waiting to go back to Lumio City and play more of this. I think that it's going to do very well. I think that people are going to be pleasantly surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does turn off some fans. Like, I know that even with my extended impressions, I don't think John is sold on Pokemon Legends ZA yet, and maybe he will never be. But it doesn't have to be something for everyone, does it? So it's at least for me, and I can accept that. So that's what we have on the horizon. Obviously, there's a ton of games coming out from third parties as well. I can't even begin to think of them. One that I want to note, though, one that we surprisingly have not talked about at all, is Resident Evil 9 Requiem. Just seeing that on Switch 2, there's footage out of TGS that showed it running both in docked and handheld mode. I played RE9 Requiem on PlayStation at PAX West. They did not have a Switch 2 build as it hadn't been announced yet. And just seeing this similarity between the PS5 and the Switch 2 versions of this game is mind-boggling. Some reporting said it was running at 60 FPS. That is, again, just absolutely wild. I don't know if it's using baked lighting or hardware ray tracing. I kind of doubt it's using hardware ray tracing if it's running at 60 FPS on Switch 2. Also saw that a lot of folks, apparently there's an interesting divide in that game. Western players enjoy playing it in first person. Japanese players seem to prefer playing it in third person. I played the demo in both. I was told by the demo, like on the screen, it said that it was designed to be played first person. So I tried it first that way. Then I tried it again in third person. I'm hoping Capcom releases some of their other big third party titles on the Switch too. In particular, Pragmata is very interesting. I watched Daniel play a demo of that and I absolutely loved it. And Onimusha, the new Onimusha looks fantastic. And I desperately want to see it on the Switch too. I played a lot of Onimusha at PAX West, and I really enjoyed that as well. But there's, we don't know if those are coming for sure. RE9 Requiem, though, is, and that's a massive get for Nintendo. Having that day and date with the PlayStation 5 kind of sends the message that Nintendo is done playing around. Like they are competing. They are trying to compete on equal terms with these massive boxes in our living room. And I have to say, to close out the show, Nintendo has found themselves in a very interesting position. I'm worried that Nintendo will increase the price of the Switch 2 when they should be doing all they can to keep it where it's at. Obviously, they guaranteed it through, I think, till this month, till October. And I understand that we are in a very challenging economic environment. However, the delta that has opened up between Nintendo and their competitors, being $200, the Switch being $200 cheaper than either of their competitors, puts them at a unique advantage to move more hardware as we go into the holiday season, to sell more units, to get people playing Metroid and Pokemon Legends as we get closer. You want to increase that install base. You want some of those 150 million Switch 1 owners to buy Switch 2s, especially around Christmas time. So I'll be interested to see where Nintendo takes this. Do they maybe eat a bit of a loss on the hardware itself and continue to sell at the current price point, depending on how this whole global economic situation that I can barely understand works out? Or do they kind of ride the wave that Microsoft and Sony have been and increase the price of the hardware, making it that much more difficult to get for kids this holiday? I hope that Nintendo does the smart thing and maybe takes a bit of a hit to ensure that they get the Switch 2 into more homes, because obviously more Switch 2s will mean more games. Developers are going to invest more in the hardware if more people have it. So I think that Nintendo will do the right thing here, and that they won't bump it past the 500 that it's already at here in the States. But Nintendo has surprised me in all the wrong ways before, and I hope this isn't one of those cases. But I want to know what you think. Do you think that we're going to see the $500 Switch 2 for the remainder of this year? And do you think after that, is Nintendo going to bump it up? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. But this has been the first week in Nintendo in a really long time. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is ironically the first solo episode I've ever done fully on video. So I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you'd like me to add more segments. We're going to be evolving the show as time goes on, figuring things out and talking about more and more games, as there's just a ton to play. But we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're happy, safe, and healthy wherever you are. And I'll see you next time.